Good evening, and welcome to the 127th Annual Hicks Speaking and Writing Contest. A tradition that has endured relatively unchanged for a century and a quarter is a testament to the parents, teachers, and students who value community and understand the importance of individual expression in that community. Tonight, we go kind of old school, which for me is just school. We go back to 18, you're all going to do much better than I am, don't worry. We go back to 1892, and tonight we'll run almost the same as it did 127 years ago. Our speakers will forego devices in favor of voices, and our essayists will forego emojis in favor of sustained, thoughtful expression. While tonight's essays and speeches may only be a few pages or a few minutes, they represent countless hours of revisions and rehearsals. So thank you to our preliminary judges, our teachers, parents, siblings, friends, pets, innocent bystanders who may have been asked or forced to be a part of that process. Although our essayists have avoided speaking in public tonight, we'd still like to subject them to a moment of public recognition before the winners are announced later tonight. In, I think, alphabetical order, we have Jose Crespo. In his essay, Shape of Myself, Jose shares his journey of self-discovery and sends a message to the world that those like him will persevere. We have Shakodat Hambabava in Control or Be Controlled. Shakodat reminds us that our problems can be overcome with hard work and a desire to change. Hanbabava. All right, anyway. Allison McInnes. Allison's Breaking the Stigma is a candid examination of managing mental health issues at a young age. And Michaela Nelson, her essay, Stronger Than I Think, describes how difficult times and a willingness to get involved helped her through high school and gave her hope for the future. All right, without further ado, our first speaker. Our first speaker looks at this country's approach to immigration at both the national and local levels with Going Home, Yamil Beltran.
I mean, it's Yamile, but thank you. Every day, I wake up to the sound of an old-fashioned alarm clock. I get out of my bed and I pick out my outfit for the day. I hop in the shower, brush, and floss my teeth. I go through the school day in boring classes, listening to teacher babble about the life of Pi and the Power series and molar mass. I'm pretty normal for a standard teenager in America, but in the back of my mind, anxiety begins to bubble through the day. I live in fear of going home and finding out my stepmother has been deported. The fear of me losing her overpowers any other emotion I've ever experienced. America has been known as the melting pot country for as long as I can remember. There are over 318 million people from different races and cultures in this melting pot. We are getting more diverse by the day. My family is part of that 318 million people. We are from that country, South of America. We're known as drug dealers, rapists, job stealers, and people who are just hopping the border. We are Mexicans. My father came to America solely to work and gain more money to help provide for his forever growing family. But while he was in America, he met my mother. My mother is a US citizen, but at a very young age, she moved to Mexico and was raised there. My parents married quickly and brought my sister into the world, and then me 3 years later. Taking into consideration how life was in Mexico, they realized we would be better off being raised in America. Here, we have more job opportunities, better education, and literally less likely to be killed on the street. Later on, my mother left my father, and he took on the responsibility of being a single parent. Eventually, it became too much for him to handle on his own. So he called on the people who could help, family. Thus started the fear of losing something I needed in my life. There are two types of citizens, natural-born and naturalized citizens. Natural-born citizens are self-explanatory, so I don't have to go into much detail. But to be considered a naturalized citizen, you have to pass a series of tests established by Congress. Not only are there levels of citizens, but there are also different levels of non-citizens. In America, there are 3 categories. One category is permanent/conditional residents, which are more commonly known as green card holders. Second category is non-immigrants. People who fall in this category are in the country legally, but temporarily. So students, business visitors, and tourists, and people who just need to be protected temporarily. The last category is the immigrants, the undocumented. These people are the ones who enter the country illegally and unable to live or work here. As for my father, he came here on a work visa, but my uncle sponsored him and he became a permanent resident. He missed his family and was so excited to be able to go home and, be in Mexico again. So he finally took a trip. While he was there, he met my stepmother, and he was so happy to be with her. He wished to bring her here to America to live with him and be a part of our lives. She agreed, but they both came to the realization that if she were to come here, she'd be part of the 11.2 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. That didn't faze them. In January 2010, they safely arrived. That month was not only the first month of the year, but it was the month my fear first emerged, and the talks of if I'm gone began. We lived in fear for the last 8 years of our lives, spending most of the time looking over our shoulder. Walking down the street, we saw accusing faces. Hearing sirens made us sweat. We felt questioning eyes, wondering if we had something to hide. Not only did we live in the world of fear, but we lived in the world of what if. What if it was no longer, what if I didn't buy my prom dress? What if they mispronounced my name at graduation? What if I forgot something when I'm packing for UNH? It became, what if she wasn't there to take pictures with me? What if she wasn't there to see me switch my tassel? What if my mother wasn't there to help me take the first step into adulthood? Not only did we fear the things in our community, but we feared what was going on in the political spectrum. At the time my stepmother arrived in the United States, we were under the presidency of Barack Obama. In 2012, he introduced DACA, the Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals, which simply offers children who are brought to America as immigrants protection at a very young age, and so they wouldn't be deported and on the path to becoming naturalized citizens. Obama continued to protect America and had a record-breaking of 2.7 million deportations, not including the self-deportations. He never took the focus off of helping those who wanted to be here and to support their families. This gave my family hope. There was someone out there looking for us. It allowed us to breathe. All good things must come to an end. 2016 was time to vote for another president. The election process put us on edge again. We had frequent talks about what to do if things didn't go in our favor. Donald Trump became our president. Our stress, anxiety, and our fear reached a new level. The deportation numbers have risen. Do not get me wrong, I am not against deporting hundreds and thousands of criminals, but I am against deporting people who are here to support and give their families a better life. I am against removing DACA from our society and sending all of those kids home. I am against building a wall to protect us when we have never needed a wall. Deportation is not as uncommon as one thinks. Even though the undocumented are at a high risk of being deported, at one point in their lives, they believe it's not going to happen to me. Then reality hits, and you're in handcuffs on your way home. It can happen to you at anywhere, at any time. For instance, it's happened in our own state, even in our own town of Meriden. It almost happened to one of us. A former member of the Platt community almost lost his family. Now, his family were the type of people you'd leave your house key with, the ones who would always be there to make you feel welcomed, the ones who would always engage in their community to make them happy and better. But they didn't have the papers to be here for that. They were living their American dream, but because they didn't have those papers, they couldn't stay here to live it. Sorry. But the Meriden community rallied and protested their deportation for a month, and they were granted a year to stay here and granted 2 more after that. Criminal deportations have made America a safer place. Other deportations may have made America a safer place, but it has also torn apart millions of families over the years. All I ask is that after hearing this speech, you do not wish to rip my family apart, and that you open your eyes and help fight for the families that are here to live a better life and the same opportunities you were granted. We have all seen what the power of community can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Yamale. And don't worry, Mr. Montemuro does a flawless job with pronunciations at graduation, much better than I'm doing tonight. Our next speaker examines society's materialism run amok and what can be done about it, with 3 supreme tennis balls, Mohammed Hamdan.
I have 3 very expensive tennis balls on my desk, and I have no idea what for. I don't even play tennis. Over the past few months of me owning these balls, I've only opened the package twice. Since then, it has been forsaken to a paperweight. Some of you may be wondering, how expensive could tennis balls really be? Well, your average 3-pack at your local Target or Walmart costs you the low price of $2. Meanwhile, my balls cost me the low price of $26 after shipping and handling. What a steal. What's more interesting is that these 3 tennis balls are currently listed on sites like eBay for nearly $80. Only thing that differentiates these 3 from the average pack from Walmart is that it comes in an all-white color with a small red logo that reads Supreme. Yes, Supreme. Over the course of the past few years, this brand, alongside others, have gathered a cult-like following over the merchandise of overpriced streetwear and accessories. Other than their clothing, Supreme has a plethora of seemingly useless objects that is being marketed and sold out nearly instantly to people around the world. Crowbars, hammers, chopsticks, piggy banks, tennis balls, and even a brick are some of the hundreds of these said objects. And again, all these objects are completely normal, with the only exception being the brand name logo. Despite this, I can't help but ask myself, why? Why do millions of people and I find ourselves in this trap of consumerism every day? It is ludicrous to think that people will spend insane amounts of money on useless items just for the brand name logo. But look around you. I'm sure we're all guilty of the same issue. We live in a materialistic world where people are beginning to value the luxury items that they own way more than anything else about themselves. The culture of obsessing over owning the best name brand, the newest shoes, the nicest hats, the coolest tennis balls is absurd, yet it has formulated and become the world we live in today. Societal rules and expectations has created this need to value or be valued via these items we own. Why is this? I believe flashing these items gives individuals a sense of security and the hope that people will see them as economically affluent people. The ideas of a materialistic society have been emphasized and expressed everywhere, including the music industry, where they normally discuss it under 2 lights. They either gloat with it or they oppose it. Artists can be known to talk about the amount of money they have acquired by flaunting the words of expensive brands in their lyrics or expressing the amount of millions of dollars they currently have in their bank account, 8 to be specific. Polar opposite, however, tend to have artists express how people are always going to crave that cheddar, crave that bread, crave the cream, because cash rules everything around me. Cream or Cash Rules Everything Around Me is a famous song by the Wu-Tang Clan, where the rap group exchanges verses about how society has grown to adore people with money and hoist them into positions of power around the world. Ruling in our society has begun to correlate with the amount of money one owns. The title of the song itself has resonated with so many listeners and other artists that since its release in 1994, nearly 70 songs have sampled the lyrics, Cash Rules Everything Around Me. From arguably some of the best artists including Drake, Jay-Z, Notorious B.I.G., and Lil Wayne, just to name a few. These artists, who have also been known to flaunt their money, have also grown a disgust to our society and is looking to find a way out of obsessing over this ownership. Due to this obsession for luxury, we have found ourselves in a plateau in the world of science. Most of our major advancements in science is discovering planets that are billions of miles away. That's so boring. No one is discovering gravity, discovering electricity, or even creating the theory of relativity anymore. Instead of these advancements, society as a whole seems to be more concerned with advancing on the temporary luxury items around us. For example, a population in our world is more concerned with and is funneling thousands of dollars to make the perfect sex robot, rather than discovering a way to fly to Mars, for example. We're beginning to care less and less about ideas and discoveries that will last eternities and care more and more about materialistic objects that emphasize our current existence. All in all, we are more concerned with how our wealth can be portrayed based on the items we own. We as people want to show everyone else how much money we have. This can be very metaphorical through the clothes or the tennis balls we choose to buy, or very literal through the pictures of money littered all over us just for a simple post on Instagram, Snapchat, or Twitter. I myself am guilty of this. Everyone lives through a different lifestyle, but one resounding thing is an essential part of all our lives. That cash money, that moolah, them dollar bills, y'all. After 2 solid months of owning these tennis balls, I now found a use for them. It is a way for me to discover what is happening in the world we live in. The harsh reality of this materialistic world is all around us, yet we sit idly by, trying to buy the newest and most luxurious items for their short amount of uses. Although we must find a way past this forsaken society. Although this may be a worldwide epidemic, we all suffer within. We must all be able to take the steps individually. Our new society of millennials forces us to value the items we own much more than the people we love, or even the ideas we share amongst our peers. We must all learn how to get past the materialistic lifestyle we have become so comfortable with calling the world around us. There may be many paths in order to overcome what we know to be normal, but I believe we can all start together. I challenge you to take the first step with me. We must no longer spend our hard-earned money for the satisfaction of unneeded luxurious items, but rather spend our time and money aiding discoveries in the scientific, political, mathematical, philosophical, and many other fields, or at least lend a helping hand and make a difference in our society and to the people who need it most. Not every step needs to be one giant leap for mankind, but it should at least be a bunny hop in the right direction, whether that be in your own path or for the path of the greater good. As for myself, I intend on making this difference in my daily life as much as I can. I aspire to be the change I wish to see in the world, and that begins with finding the purpose with the items I do have. I own 3 very expensive tennis balls, and I think I'm going to use them to learn how to juggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Our next speaker discusses the latest item that is slowly killing society. With serial killers at our fingertips, Julia Kudowitz.
A cigarette between your lips, cool breeze brushing up against your skin, the sun setting in the far distance. In the 1920s, smoking wasn't something to be feared like it is today. Tobacco companies were putting anyone on advertisements who would help sell their packs. From physicians to Santa Claus, there were ads that told women it would keep them skinny and beautiful, while others said it would help coughing and throat irritation. What a load of crap! These companies were spoon-feeding the public ridiculous claims with no proof. But this era wasn't occupied by Google searches or WebMD for that matter. The nation relied on the knowledge of their doctors. Once tobacco companies realized this, they used it to their advantage. In the early 1930s, growing tobacco companies like R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris would begin to give away free packs of cigarettes to doctors. And as the companies began to compete with each other, creating advertisements better than the last, science started to compete with them too. Researchers started to see the relationship between lung cancer and smoking. Tobacco companies stopped competing with each other and started working together to try and save their precious billion-dollar enterprises. But it was too late. 1964, Surgeon General Luther Terry warns the country of a link between smoking and lung cancer, as well as chronic bronchitis. 1965, tobacco industries were required to put warning labels on all their products. 1970, Richard Nixon signed the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act, which banned tobacco ads airing on television. 1999, Truth, an anti-smoking campaign, began its battle against smoking. As we stepped into the new century, tobacco companies were left behind. No more ads with physicians plastered on them. Rules and regulations were created. The cancerous effects of smoking is now known to the public. There are far fewer that light up a cigarette at the end of the day, but there's a new addiction out there that is causing cancer. Everyone does it. It doesn't even require you to get out of bed. We switched from cigarettes to cell phones. Yeah, cell phones. How'd you not know about the cancerous effects of smoking when Apple puts it in the fine print? This so-called trusted cell phone company has placed a hidden warning message about the use of your cell phone in your settings under the About tab. They expect you to go through three different tabs screens to get there. Now look, you aren't going to get cancer from posting the latest selfie on Instagram or tweeting about the snow in April, but you might just increase your chances by picking up that phone call or tucking your phone by your pillow at night. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention have said that there's no scientific evidence on a link between cell phones and cancer due to the device's radio frequency radiation. While this is true, RF radiation has been classified as a possible human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Once upon a time, cigarettes too were deemed healthy by doctors everywhere. Physicians even doubted the idea of a connection between smoking and disease, believing it was only a few unlucky individuals who were unfortunate enough to be negatively affected by smoking. Now we can see that it's clearly not the case, but there was little awareness when this was happening in the 1930s. CDC might have said that there's no scientific evidence to link brain tumors and cell phones, but with studies being conducted to connect what we know about RF radiation and how it affects human health, you would think that there would be more awareness about how you should use your cell phone. Since the development of these devices, scientists and researchers have brought us all into an unauthorized experiment. Cell phone users are in the largest biological experiment ever, says neuro-oncologist Leif Salford. In the past few years, studies and books have been released to warn users about the possibility of tumors and other risks while using your cell phone. Every day, users are putting high-powered microwave transmitters directly onto their ears. Obviously not the microwaves found in your kitchen. That would look ridiculous. But these cell phones have the same electromagnetic radiation, much like a high-powered microwave. This type of radiation impacts all living beings exposed to it. Regardless of the controversies out there, researchers agree on this one thing. Studies have shown that electromagnetic fields cause damage and mutations of the DNA. The first step in developing cancer, you might ask? Oh, right, mutations. Dr. Dever Davis has started a campaign for safer cell phones, which entails a requirement for manufacturers to begin selling their products with earpieces, speakerphone options, and warning labels. 1965, tobacco companies were required to put warning labels on all their products. These cell phone companies have stolen the playbooks of tobacco industries. What a better way to get consumers than to play the same game that tricked millions of Americans in the past. With cell phones, everything you ever want to know is at your fingertips. Everything from patient documents, essays, grades, even human interactions are just a tap and swipe away. Parents are giving their kids phones and tablets to keep them occupied. Even my 10-year-old cousin has an iPhone. When I was 10, my siblings and I would run outside in the fresh air. I knew what a sunset looked like. Now the only sunset kids seem to see is one of their lock screens. The only games that these kids seem to know are the ones in the App Store. Not convinced? Toys R Us is closing more than 700 of their locations. Approximately 40% of children 8 years old and younger have their own cell phone. 8 years old. In 2011, less than 1% of kids their age had smart devices. But what does any of this have to do with cancer? Cell phone companies are now competing with the biggest toy companies of all, and they're winning. Cell phone companies aren't just killing us, they're killing industries. Family game nights have turned into teens locking themselves in their room with their cell phones. And it's not only the teens. Cell phone companies know how to appeal to all ages. The new societal norm is to have your cell phone on you at all times. It's not about safety anymore. Kids and adults alike are even sleeping right next to their cell phones. 78 to 86% of teens say they sleep with their cell phones. I used to be that part of that statistic. Before bed every night, I used to watch Parks and Rec on my phone. I felt the need to hear some kind of white noise to fall asleep. Before diving into the research for this essay, I put my phone next to my pillow every night. I was putting myself at risk for something much more serious than losing a few hours the next morning. What we use to wake us up in the morning is keeping us up at night. And even worse, it's increasing our chances for cancer. Keeping our modern-day alarm clocks on throughout the night boosts our exposure to electromagnetic radiation. You're better off simply putting your phone on airplane mode, since it turns off the transceiver that lets us receive these texts and phone calls. Maybe it's time, dare I say, to buy a traditional alarm clock again. Dr. Dever Davis is one of the few doctors that has shed light onto cell phone radiation with her book Disconnect: The Truth About Cell Phone Radiation, What the Industry is Doing to Hide It, and How to Protect Your Family. She mentions the urgency of combating cell phone exposure to prevent a brain illness epidemic in years to come. The book bashes on the cell phone companies' revealing agenda, much like the one the tobacco industries used back in the 20th century. I mean, why would a billion-dollar enterprise expose themselves while they're just starting to make it big? Cigarettes are about this small. Your phone? Probably a little bigger. Nonetheless, how could two things held at the tips of our fingers cause so much damage in the future? Decades ago, our parents and grandparents didn't have the common knowledge that we have today about the cancerous effects of smoking, but we do. We will become the era of parents that didn't know about the cancerous effects from cell phone radiation, but our kids will. 1964, Surgeon General Luther Terry warns the country of a link between smoking and lung cancer. May 10th, 2018, a student at Platt High School warns you about the dangers of cell phones.
Thank you, Julia. Our final speaker shares her concerns about rampant consumerism and how the future will judge us with To Greed or Not to Greed, Jules Pellegrino.
Greed. One word, 5 letters. A word so small, but it can consume your whole life. There are various ways to define greed, and we are all entitled to interpret this word how we want. I believe greed is the insatiable desire for something, especially wealth or power. Money isn't the root of all evil. The love of money is. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." It isn't solely caring about possessions or money, but excessively caring. It overpowers the true character of a person and captures the evil within. True greed can never be satisfied, and it is a misconception that you need to be greedy or act greedy in order to become successful. Greed is not good. It drains the soul. At some point or another, greed gets the best of everybody. People who possess this character flaw become blind to what's important. They become selfish and wish to obtain anything that benefits them. It's essential to understand that greedy people will only help others when it's convenient for them, but it's salient to know where this greed comes from. Greed can often be described as selfishness. There are 2 types. The first is spiritual, meaning someone is primarily concerned with their own self regardless of others, rather than materialistic, also known as, who is unreasonably concerned with material possessions, mainly money-oriented. Greed, as it relates to selfishness, refers mainly to being materialistic. People are always wishing for more than what they already have. Maybe it's because they like the challenge, or maybe it's because they're jealous of their friends. It may even be because they feel like they will never be good enough with what they already have. Whatever the excuse might be, I'm sure that most of us can agree, If you live in a state of depravity, it can force you to be greedy. As you acquire what you need, greed drives you to what you want because you're frightened of falling back into that state. The fear is irrational. It cannot be satisfied. No matter how much you acquire the fear, it keeps driving you to want more. Psychologist Barry McGinnis captures the essence of what I mean by saying, we all have potential for greedy tendencies, but in people with a strong fear of lack or deprivation, greed can become a dominant pattern. With this comes the truth that no matter how far you go to reach your needs, there will always be the overpowering greed that wishes for more. I understand some people will believe greed is a good thing, and while everyone is entitled to their own opinions. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the movie Wall Street. In it lies a famous line that goes, greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right, greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all forms, greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge has marked the upward surge of mankind. This film reflects all the good that comes with greed. It manifests the hidden picture of why and how we use it. For example, we live in a society where we worship success, celebrities, and money. But have you ever recognized the greed that came within? Couldn't you say we're all greedy in some way? In some instances, it can be seen that with success comes greed. We praise people who have accomplished their goals. But should they have been greedy, do we look up to that as well? Psychologist Dr. Stephen A. Diamond states, we all have greed for something. If this is the case, then greed can be seen as good. Then again, it's basically stating that all successful people got to where they are because they were greedy, which isn't the case. Personally, I believe all my accomplishments came solely through hard work and dedication. Since I was a young girl, I wished to excel in school and sports. But you can't just wish for something and expect it to happen. You must fully apply yourself to that something that determines your success in order to achieve exactly what you want. It is believed that if you have a strong enough passion for something, you can become successful. A great example is Bill Gates. He created the entire Microsoft and stated unequivocally, Microsoft is not about greed. It is about innovation and fairness. His interest started at a very young age and grew into a very big passion, later on making him one of the most successful people in the world. Bill Gates truly exemplifies a man who accomplished the highest wealth, the absence of greed. There is a minuscule number of people in this world who have achieved just that. The celebrities we worship today are the celebrities who convince us that we need to wear Versace in order to have style, that we need to drive a Ferrari in order to be chic, or that we need to toast with Dom Perignon in order to have taste. The beautiful people may want the diamond watches, but other people value the time. Yes, there are people out there who wish to have this decadent lifestyle, but the remainder wish to know the genesis of greed. Greed is born from early negative experiences, which consists of insufficient nurturing in early childhood. Natural desire for love, nurture, and care are all born with infants. However, the caregiver can seem to be consistently absent in this nurturing role, and this absence can make the infant experience lack, enough for one to become terrified of never getting enough of what they need. As they grow, so will their need for, well, everything. Feelings of vulnerability and worry will permeate through their entire body, mixing with low self-esteem. Not only do these never-ending feelings generate a need for a constant substitute, but they construct a fear within. Fear drives greed. With this ever-present fear, a person will crave the needed thing. They tend to envy those who have what they need, whether it is money, power, food, fame, and so on. It causes them to want more, but since they are driven by this greed, it is never enough, because what they lack, they can't acquire. They're trying to fill the void. You see, these people recognize they weren't given the proper childhood growing up, so they believe they deserve more than what they already possess. They don't envy what these people have. They envy that these people have what they need and are satisfied. Sure, they want to see you do well, but never better than them. For them, as far as they can see, life remains a simple choice between fear and greed. In summation, it may appear greed can be good, but once you unravel the true meaning of greed, it's more than just a whimsical desire for something. It is something that is a part of you, a character flaw, fostered from depravity or lack, illuminating the broad view that greed is a type of selfishness, and it is born from early negative experiences. Always remember that greed does not rest until it is satisfied, and greed is never satisfied. According to author Catherine Lewis, greed in the end fails even the greedy. If one is chasing after something they will never gain, it is merely absorbing their energy. Greed is not good because it drains the soul. After I wrote the speech, I began to wonder, will greed exist in the future? If there has always been greed, then we can assume people will always be greedy. That won't change. As we race into the future with the engine of technology providing the unhinged thrust that controls our lives exponentially, will we even have a choice? I don't think we will. I don't think we'll have a chance to be greedy, to be selfish, to be gluttonous, to love, to be who we are, whether it is a character flaw or not. 30 years from now, when Big Brother controls every aspect of our lives, how we think, how we feel, what we do, will we look back to this day, to this moment when people were greedy, and say, maybe greed was good? Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. How about one more round of applause for all of our speakers this evening? I'd ask you to stay seated and enjoy the piano stylings of Peyton Thiel while the judges tabulate their scores. All right, our first awards this evening are for the writing contest. We'd like to thank former Platt teachers, Ms. Barbara Kenzier and Mr. Roger McQuiggan, for serving as our final essay judges.
They're not here.
No, they're not here. They're but I told them I'd say their names anyway. In fourth place, with Breaking the Stigma, Allison McMinnis. In third place, with Stronger Than I Think, Michaela Nelson. In second place, with Shape of Myself, Jose Crespo. And that brings us to first place, with Control or Be Controlled, Shakodot Hambababa. Wow. Writers hardly ever get cheered. That's great. All right, before awarding our medals for this evening for the speaking contest, I'd like to acknowledge our final judges for tonight's speeches. Assistant Fire Chief for the City of Meriden, Mr. Ryan Dunn. Professor of English at Middlesex Community College, Mr. Adam Floridia. And Maloney High School English teacher, Miss Catherine Valentin. In fourth place, with Going Home, Yamile Beltran. In third place, with 3 Supreme Tennis Balls, Mohammed Hamdan. In second place, with To Greed or Not to Greed, Jules Pellegrino. And in first place, Serial Killers at Our Fingertips, Julia Kudowitz. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out this evening. Oh, all right, the winners can stay for a picture. We have cookies and copies of the essays in the back on your way out. So please stay and enjoy. Thank you.